Hey friends, your old pal, Barkey Dog here. I thought what I'd do to wrap things up this year is tell you a really scary story. That's right, so I turned down the lights in the studio here, and there's just a little moonlight coming in. And I thought I'd go ahead and tell you this story. It's a true story. How do I know? Because it happened to me one Halloween many years ago. I call it the face at the window. It was rather warm that year, as I recall, for Halloween. All day long, us kids were really excited about going trick-or-treating and what would come after trick-or-treating, other than eating candy. As you know, the one thing us kids wanted to do was take revenge on Clarice the cat. Nobody liked Clarice the cat. She was a lousy neighbor, and she was always hassling us kids. And she was a cat. Blech! And every year at Halloween, we tried to get her with some pranks, but well, we always failed. But this year would be different. We had considered many tricks we could play, everything from TPing her yard to throwing eggs at the house, anything we could think of. But this year, we decided to fall back on an old standby. We would soap her windows. That night, after we made our rounds, we waited and waited until all the porch lights went off. And after trick-or-treat was over, it was our time to act. We hid across the street from Clarice the cat's house and waited until we were sure the coast was clear. And then we all snuck into her yard, and each one of us kids had a window in mind to soap. And we set to work, too. Eggy Forrester took one of the front windows, and the other kids all had their own, and I chose a front side window. And I began to draw an ugly face that looked a lot like Clarice the cat's face on her window in soap. I had just completed my masterpiece of art when I saw a movement in the window behind the glass. It was her face. Clarice the cat had spotted me. I raised the alarm and all those kids skedaddled, and I heard her yell, and she ran to the door, and she screamed out at us into the night.
I know you. I know you. Don't you think you can get away? I know who you are. I'm gonna come for you in the night.
Well, we all ran away, and then we gathered up, and we all laughed because we thought we got her real good that year. Every one of her downstairs windows were soaped. And then we all made our way home. All us kids walking down the sidewalk and splitting off here and there and here and there. Until finally, I was all alone, walking down the street to my house. I got the feeling that I was being followed. I know it sounds weird, but every time I stopped and turned back, there was nobody there. Anyway, by the time I got near my house, I was kind of nervous, and I just ran the last dozen yards or so into the yard and looked back, and there was nobody there. I didn't see anyone, but I thought I saw a shadow flit behind a tree down the street. I ran in the house and closed the door. Then I felt safe. Anyway, I deposited my haul of candy, and I went upstairs because it was getting late. And I turned on the light in my room and got out of my costume and got into my pajamas and got ready for bed. And then I got into bed and switched out the light and started to drift off to sleep, feeling really good about a Halloween that was awesome. Just as I was drifting off, you're in that sort of dreamy, half-sleep world, I felt a shadow flit across my face. And I was like, what's that? And I looked up, and I didn't see anything. The moon was streaming into the room from the window, but I didn't see anything. And then the shadow again. It flitted across the room, and it was coming from the window. And then I saw it. It was a head, a round head, peeking up over the windowsill from outside. That's what caused the shadow. And I stared at it in horror. I didn't know what it was. I was on the second floor. How could anybody be outside? And the head would move from side to side and hover around and then disappear below the windowsill. And then it would start to come back up and look in the room. I could just make out a horrible face. Oh, I was scared. I pulled the covers up over my head and was trembling out of fear and terror. And this went on all night. All night that I could remember, this went on. The head would peep up over the windowsill and then move to the side and then the other side. And I could hear it tapping the window. Dum, dum, dum. Tapping into the window as if it were looking for a way to get in. And every time I thought the head was gone, it would peep up again. And it would start all over again. I was terrified. Eventually the moon started to set, and I couldn't see the face very clearly anymore, but it was still there. Thump, 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 on the window. And this went on and on. I covered my head, and somehow I must have fallen asleep. I don't know how, but I didn't get much sleep. But then it was morning, and I didn't dare look out the window. I was so scared. It was daylight, but I didn't dare look. I looked on the other side of the room, and where the sun was coming in and hitting the wall, I could see a hint of a shadow moving. And I threw on my robe, my slippers, and I ran out of the room, closed the door behind me, and I ran down the stairs. And I was so scared. I didn't know what it was. And I just knew I had to find out what was this face at the window. So I didn't even say good morning to my parents. I just rushed out the front door, and I grabbed the first thing I had, which was an umbrella that was left by the door. That's all I had for a weapon. But I was going to fight. I was going to find out what this thing was and put a stop to it once and for all. So I went out the front door, and I went down the porch and slipped around the side of the porch to the edge of the house. And then I raised up the umbrella, ready to strike, as I jumped around the corner of the house, and there was nothing there. There was nobody there. It was just the yard, just beside the house. There was nothing there. And then I saw it. Attached to the faucet on the outside of the house beneath my window. There was a piece of string tied to it. And I looked and I looked and I looked, and then I figured it out. I put down my umbrella and I went and untied the string and gathered it up, and at the end of that string there was a balloon with an ugly face drawn on it. Clarice the cat had got me. I don't know how she knew which room was mine. She must have seen me come in and turn the bedroom light on. Then she figured out which was my room. And she had got this balloon and tied it on a string with this face on it and put it just at the right height to frighten me. How did I know it was Clarice the cat? Because the face on that balloon was the same face that I'd drawn on her window. Ugh! Foiled again. And right then and there, I swore a grim oath on my comic book collection that next Halloween I'd take revenge on Clarice the cat. Wasn't that a scary story? Boy, that was a scary story. That scared me, and I told it. It was a scary story. Scary. Scary story.